And we are live now, folks. So, hey, folks, this is me, Vishwas Nayan. I'm the host of this Bill Piper show. A lot of times, caching has become the worst strategy. People come out with, I need this, I need that. And guess what? Everybody struggles with the minute aspect. Strategizing caching has been more challenging to some guys, but it's more production intensive task that just goes behind. It's simple logic, simple ways in which you interact with the databases, but it's a lot beyond it. And I'm very proud that we have a Redis operator from Obstree, which is in obstree.github.io. You can just go there to see whatever it is. And I don't want you to just go on blindly to that repository and just start contributing, and there's no sense to it. And what I told to myself was, I'll call an expert who is very good at this, and her career grew because of that. I think that's the best app description that I give to Poonam. Poonam is currently working as a member of technical staff at Salesforce, and she has been in a lot of community space. She's done a lot of contribution, by the way, and she has really worked on various different technologies. I think it's an honor to have Poonam on the show, and she's one of those bigger sisters to me in the communities. Like, I look back to her, like we talk a lot, by the way. We talk a lot, by the way, and I'm really glad that Poonam is on the Build Piper show. And welcome to the show, Poonam. Thanks for being on my show.
Hey Vishwas, thanks for having me. That
Sure,
was a very good introduction.
that's how it is. That's how I evolve, right? So let's get it started. So before going on, right? I just wanted to know, what are the challenges in Redis, and what are some of those things that you felt like, what, this is something that every developer needs to touch upon, and what is that thing that you really want in that market presence?
Redis is a very good open source tool which has different types of data types that you can use, and it is very developer friendly. And also, you can get started with it. You can spin up a Docker instance and get started on it very quickly. So that's what makes it versatile, is what I think with Redis. The other challenge that I think with Redis is it's in memory. Like, it is both its pro and con, that it is in memory. So once the memory is full, what do you do then? So there are various strategies to circumvent that. We will look at it in the session. But yeah, all in all, I feel Redis is a very hit caching store that you can use in your application to make your application performant.
Yeah, I think the quick round of an intro for our Ops3 GitHub, so that people understand, okay, this is what we are bringing onto the market as an open source product. I think you guys will get a chance to learn a lot. I think it's now here. So if you see my screen, it's ops3.github. I'll just go to the zoom it so that I can zoom and do whatever I want. So where is zoom it, by the way? Zoom it 64. Yes, it's working. So it's ops3.github.io. Just go there, just hit on this link using your browser. Guess what? You'll land up in this page. Click on containers. It'll just navigate to the new tab. And guess what? We have a Docker Redis image, which is maintained by us, and as well as a Redis operator. And it has good amount of stars, by the way, and a good amount of contribution which is happening apart from Ops3 as well. So there are many folks who are contributing apart from Ops3. And guess what? You have to be just proficient in Go and make files, Docker files. Everything has been sorted here. And of course, there is a good documentation which is written here. You can just go and see this. You can just go and see the quick start images, which is still going to be the installation, which is using Yelm as well as kubectl. It's just copy this command, you're sorted. That's where it is. And that's it from my side, folks. There is a lot that we can just talk about in terms of the Redis operator, this and that. There's a lot. So we'll just cover out the basics and just get your contribution started. There is a lot of gift planned. There's a lot of goodies planned for you folks. So just go on with it. So Poonam, the stage is yours.
Yep, thanks Vishwas. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, your screen is visible now.
Yeah, so I'll start the Right. So, yeah. So the topic for today is, as we talked about it, it's a brief introduction to modern age caching using Redis. And this is my Twitter handle. You can reach out to me if you have any doubts about it in future, also after the session. So yeah, let's dive right into it. First, look at what is Redis. So, long back when applications like Twitter were scaling, they had problems with making the data available to user in a lightning speed. So that's when these companies started adopting Redis as a caching mechanism. So Redis changed the caching game by giving data storage and retrieval from RAM, that is the volatile memory, and not disk. So that is what the secret sauce of Redis is. That is what makes it so fast and quick to use, because it uses the RAM, which makes the IO call less expensive because we are getting it from the memory. And the best part is it is open source, and as we said, it is in-memory data store, and it can also be used as a NoSQL database. You don't need to have those tables and structures to use Redis. You can use it in a distributed environment. It can also be used as a message broker where you can do streaming of messages. So that's a little bit about Redis. We'll look at a use case of Redis, like where you need Redis in your application. So, suppose you have a web application now. Let's consider Netflix for an example. So, everyone uses Netflix, so you might be aware of it. So, whenever you log into Netflix, you get a homepage where you have recommendation based on your browsing history, the genre you watch. So, Netflix recommends or pushes some content that is specific to your user based on your watching history. So, suppose you go to Netflix and it loads the data, but it takes 5 seconds to load the data. You'll get bored and you'll shut down the application and go off. So, it will lose its user base, Netflix. So, this is just an example. So, what happens is, so Netflix in our case is the web application, and it goes to the database, fetches the data, that is the recommended shows, and during this interval, it's taking 5 seconds to do a complete database call, go to the database, get the data, and serve it to the user. So Redis, on the other hand, if we introduce Redis as a caching mechanism in our system, this response time will reduce drastically by multifolds. Now, as an example, I've shown that it takes 1 second, and you will see in the example that I show that it does reduce the response time considerably because of the secret sauce that we talked about. So that is one of the major use cases of Redis, that you reduce the response times of data storage and retrieval. Okay, now let's see how this works in the extended version of the example that we discussed. So we went to Netflix.com. We are trying to get the data. Now, with cache in place, what will happen is our system will not directly go to the data store and get the data. It will first go to the cache and see if we can find the data there for this user. So, and in cache, the data does not come up on its own. We have to store it. In the first call will go to database, obviously. Then we come and store it in the database, so that subsequent calls, they take less time and we can directly serve it from the cache. So in the first part, we try in the cache. If it is present in the cache, it's well and good. Otherwise, we store it in the database. We go to the database, do the call, store it in the database, and also serve the request with that DB call. So we tried the cache, but we didn't find it. So this in caching terms is called cache miss. So in the second part, we went to the data source and then we got the data from the database. We served the client request, and then we in the third part we see that we stored it in the cache. And in subsequent requests, we'll get it from the cache. So when we query in the cache and we get the data from the cache, that is called as cache hit in caching terms. So two things to note here is cache hit and cache miss. Then we also have staleness of data that we'll talk about in future. So these are the topics that we are going to cover. about Redis, that it is a key value store, the publisher subscriber model of Redis, and also how we can scale our applications in Redis. And lastly, we'll look at a simple demo on how you can use Redis with your application. So Redis is an in-memory key value store where we store values against a key. Everything is stored against a key in Redis. So you have a key and your value can be of any data types out of the multiple data types that Redis supports. And Redis is in memory. So that's what makes Redis faster. You don't go to the database to make an expensive IO call. Though Redis is in memory, the it also supports journaling and snapshots for persistence, for persistence of data, so that your data can be remodeled if in case it is lost. So in that sense, it is also durable. And Redis is single-threaded. So it is single-threaded, but we can scale it using replication and clustering. So, publisher subscriber, if you're not aware of what this model is, so very common example of PubSub model is where you receive notifications on your phone. So, there is a publisher that sends out these notifications and you receive these notifications. So, in Redis, we have publishers and subscribers. There will be multiple subscribers that listen to a channel, and a publisher publishes messages on these channels. Both publishers and subscribers are not aware of each other, but they relay these messages amongst the publisher sends the messages down to subscribers. Scaling in Redis is supported using these two concepts of replication and clustering. First, we'll look at replication, where we have a master node, a single master node, and then we have multiple slave nodes that communicate with the master node. But the latest and the very new data is present in the master. So here we see that we have a single point of failure in this master slave structure. But whereas in clustering, we have data shared across multiple nodes. So we have multiple master nodes and multiple slave nodes. And these master and slave nodes are connected to each other. They communicate amongst each other via polling. And if you see, since we have multiple master nodes, we have circumvented the problem of single point of failure, where if we only had one master node, if that master node fails, then all the subsequent nodes won't have the latest data. So if in this architecture, what happens is if one of the master nodes, in case it fails, then the other nodes will do a poll amongst each other and they will elect a master node so that one of the slave nodes can be made master node and it can get the latest data from one of the other master nodes. And this way, the architecture keeps on running. So clustering is preferred over replication, but again, it depends on your application and how you want to scale it. Okay, so Redis supports multiple data types, yes, data types which are very similar to any programming language that we use in our day-to-day life. Um, it has strings, lists, sets, ordered sets. It also has geospatial indexes where you can store data related, geographic data and information related to coordinates. Okay, before we look at an example, I also wanted to talk about the staleness of data in Redis cache. So when we talk about caching, we also have staleness of data. Suppose we went to database, we stored it in cache. Now we are not going to the database for subsequent calls. We are only going to our cache. So suppose Netflix, with the example that we considered, wants to push some new data, but I'm still serving the data from my old cache and the data that was stored beforehand. So that's when caching comes into picture. That's when expiry comes into picture. So you expire the cache in certain intervals of time so that your data is updated with the new data that is present in the database. And caching also helps to circumvent the problem of in-memory store. Since it is in-memory, you have limited memory to store your data. So with that limited memory, you have to make smart choices of expiring it so that your memory is free and you can do other things with the memory. So that's about cache expiry. So we saw three concepts in caching: cache hit, cache miss, and cache expiry. This is all in all what you have to keep in mind when you use cache in your application. So before we dive into this application using Node and a Redis client for Node.js, we'll first look at the data types that are used in Redis. We'll play around with those data types so that when we use it in the application, you'll be more clear with it. So let me show you where you can get Redis from. So this is the website, redis.io/download, where you can go and download Redis for your operating system. And you can also get a Docker image and spin up a Redis server. And you can also go to the command section of the Redis.io website, and there you can see all the commands that you can use with Redis. So I have spun up a Docker instance, and I went into it using Redis CLI. So my Redis server is running on localhost port 6379. So whenever you want to check if your Redis server is running, you simply do a ping and it responds with a POM, which means everything is fine, up and running. Now, we have very basic data structures with Redis, like set. So I will set a key, suppose foo, with a value of 100. So it says, okay, it has set that value. Now, if I go and get foo, it gets that value. So it's simple. Like you store values in a variable, similar to that, you store a value against a key. If I try to get something that is not present, then it will shout at me saying nil. It's not there. Then we can also check if a key exists in our store, like foo, it exists, so it responded with 1, which is true. And if I say exists bar, it doesn't, so it responded with false. Then we have sets, and we also have expiry. We'll first look at expiry, then we'll look at set. So set foo 100, and I'm saying expiry of 4 seconds. So this will set foo with a value of 100 and expiry of 4 seconds with it. After 4 seconds, the data will just vanish. So, and as you notice, I'm setting foo again. So it will just overwrite that data. Okay. Now, if I do time to live of foo, it says -2 because I took more than 4 seconds to TTL it. Okay, now it's 3 seconds. Now the time has elapsed. Now it will say -2 seconds. That means the data is not present in Redis. So that's how you can expire your data in Redis. Then we have sets. So suppose I do sadd. Sadd is for adding members to a set. So a key for a set, I'm using people, and I can specify the members. So suppose I have John, Kenny, Jenny. So I'm adding these users to the set people. Now I can see if these individual people are present in this set or not. So uh, S is member, people, the key, and the name of the person, John. So it says it's present. If I do something random, Brad, it's not present. Then I can get all the data at once from a set using S members and the key. The key in our case is people. So we get the list of all the members present in that set. Then we have ordered sets, or it orders based on weight that you provide to that set. So I think it's Z add. Again, we can suppose I use users. And I want to sort it based on the year of births that they have. So suppose 1980, John. Then I'll add another user, 1971, Brad. Now I can get the users using zrange command. It is similar to an array data structure where you can go and get values present in that range. So I'm specifying the entire range, start to end, which is 0 to -1. Okay, I didn't provide the name of the key. So users. So you notice it gave the Brad username first and then John because it is a sorted
Poonam,
set.
can you
So
just just make it a screen a little bigger so that like the text will be more
yeah,
visible to them.
is this
Ah,
fine?
this is perfect. Yeah, this is perfect.
Yeah. I'm sorry guys if it was not
No,
visible
no, it
earlier.
was actually visible, but I wanted it to be for a longer run, right? So I just told,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Okay. Okay. So we got our users list, which was sorted. 1971 was the birth year of Brad, and that came first, then John. So you can use Redis for sorted list as well. Then we have etcet, which is hashes. You can store multiple key value pairs, field and value pairs against a key. So suppose I have a user, Poonam, has a name of Poonam and an email, test.com. So it gets stored, and then I can do get all for user Poonam. Then it will give all the key and value for that user. So you can store multiple key values against a particular key in using etcet, and you can get all the data using get all for that key. Then similarly, we have many other data types that you can go and explore. These were the few basics that I discussed. Um, Now I think we are ready to look at the demo of our application. Um, yeah, so I'll just increase the size of this window. Yeah, so I have a basic one file application here where I'm okay. Let's look at an API. There is an API by GitHub where you can go and basically get the count of you can get all the information about a user based on their username. So this is my username on GitHub. So I went ahead and this is a get API call, so we can directly call it from our browser. We don't need Postman for it. So this is all the information that GitHub has for my user. This, so we are interested in the public repos info. It also has my bio, my Twitter username, everything. So yeah, we are going to look at the public repositories, the count of public repositories. So what we are going to do in our application is, in from our Node.js application, we'll create an API that will call this API. So API that will call in itself another API to get this value, public repos, and we'll see how the response time gets affected with the use of cache and without the use of cache. So sole purpose of this basic application is get this. This is a time-consuming operation. This API call, how that API call response time gets reduced with the introduction of cache. So I'll just quickly explain what this application is doing. So even if you're not familiar with Node.js, you use any other programming language, it's easy. It's similar to other languages. Node.js is basically JavaScript for backend. So I guess everyone has used JavaScript once in their lifetime. So shouldn't be that difficult to grasp. Node.js has a package manager. Um, so I've installed Redis in my using the package manager npm in my project. You can install it in your project using npm install Redis. And this is a basic example of how you can create a Redis client using that. So that's what I have done. I've set the Redis port and I've created a Redis client using the Redis dot create client, and I've created a basic Express application which is stored in app. Now using this app, I have created a get call which will handle the API call to that GitHub API that we created. And this is the URL on which we'll do the call. And our application server is listening on 5000 port. So yeah, this is just one line of code for creating an API in Node.js. It's that simple. So we have this handler function and we have this cache function which will handle the caching for us. So first look at get repos method. So what this get repos method does is it does that API call. So for API call, there is another npm module Axios that handles the call for us and just gives a response. So I'm using the same URL and the username that we get from URL param. So here, this username will be passing from our browser, and the response that we get, we will first set it in Redis. So if you remember that extended version of the example that I gave, I'll just show the presentation again. Yeah, here. So we'll first set the data in cache because it is a API call that we are doing. We'll first set it in cache and then we'll return the response. So if you see, I'm doing this in async manner. I won't wait for the data to be set in Redis. I'll return the response. Okay, so yeah, I'm doing a response.send. Also, this is a helper function, like a middleware function that we'll introduce before making this actual handler call. So in this handler, I'm setting the data to Redis using simple client.set and using the username as the key, which is nothing but the username that we are providing from our browser and the repos count, which we have extracted from the response here. And then I'll send the response to our browser using this set response method. Set response just prettifies the response here using a h2 tag. That's it. And yeah, let's look at the middleware function where we set the cache. So this method, so middlewares in Node.js are nothing but functions that you can use to play around with the data before actually calling the handler. So very popular use cases is authentication or login before calling the handler function. So it has access to request and response object, and it also has a next method that you can call once you are done with modifying the data, so that your handler function gets the call. So we are doing a get data from Redis here, client.get and the key. So we check if it's present in cache, and if it is, then we say that the response was served from cache, and we just send the response. We don't do the next call here, which means we served from our cache method, and the response went to the user. We don't go to the get repos method at all. But if that is not the case, if we didn't get the data from our client, then we do the next call. And in get repos, we go and set the data in Redis and also send the data to the user. So it will be clearer from here what I was talking about, that we in get repos method, we went to the data store, we got the data, set it in cache, and in subsequent calls, we are serving the data from our cache method only. We are not going to the data store at all for that username. Okay, I hope that is clear. And let's see it in action now. So my application, I have run it using node index.js, and also you can create your node application using npm init, and these are the dependencies that I've used. You can use any dependencies that you need in your application. And it's very easy to get started with a node application. You can read a medium article on it and just get started with it. Even the npm documentation is very useful. You can go and get started with it. So Yeah, that's about Node application. And let's see it in action. So I'm running my Node application using the Node command, node index.js, and our app is listening on port 5000. So I go to the browser, and this is the API that we have created in our application slash repos slash, and we are accepting a param. So localhost 5000 is the server slash repos, and here I'll pass a parameter. So Android has 62 GitHub repositories. Let's see my username 217 num. I have 51 GitHub repositories, and if you notice, this request took 385 milliseconds. Keep that number in mind. It took 385 milliseconds, and I had consoled the response on my terminal. That's why you see this. But if you see these two lines, I had added when I set the data in cache. So it says cached response to Redis. This is the response we got from the client, Redis client, when we set the data. And there was another console which said request was served by actual API call. So our actual API call took 385 milliseconds. I'll just zoom this as well. Yeah. Now, if I go ahead and make a call to the same API, then this time it will be served from cache, which is our cache method here. We can also go to our Redis server and see if I do get 417 num, we see that it is stored in the cache. So now let's see if I go here and hit this API again, it has drastically come down to 22 milliseconds. So you can see how powerful Redis is and how you can benefit from this in your application. The load time would reduce and the user would come and stay in your application because they will experience faster user experience there. So that's the magic of Redis, and that was the small demo I prepared for it. But see, if you have understood this basics, you can go and implement it in large scale applications as well. Understanding the basics is important here. That's what I tried to explain. I hope that made some sense, and yeah, I think yeah, that's all I had for the demo. And I would like to conclude it saying that Redis is very powerful and versatile data store with its secret sauce of being in memory, where you can leverage the power of faster response times. So you should think about adding it in your application and playing around with it so that your users uh, will stay with connected with your application and not leave your application because of your slow application. So having said that, Redis is not the only option to improve performance. You also have to check if your application is actually performant or not. Like you have to check the big O of your various handlers, functions that you have. You first have to make your methods performant and then add a caching layer to it so that your response times, if you have multiple API calls or multiple DB calls or calls to SQL database, which is slower, then you can introduce caching and yeah, make use of caching and its useful benefits.
Yes, I think you know what? It's all about strategizing how bad you really want to keep that latency down to like
Yeah.
the even the slightest milliseconds. Because even if you see a service mesh communicating with each other, there's a lot and lot of impact that it just creates in one fraction of a second, and there's a lot of impact that it comes on the table. There is a lot of things that people will say, oh, you know what, there's something happening wrong, and guess what, you didn't have your caching strategies right. I think that's the whole point. I think does
And you
Node.js
know, Vishwas, there's sorry for interrupting you. There's one more popular use case where you have API limits to certain popular API libraries where you can hit an API for only certain number of times in a day. So if you have caching in place, you have stored the response in your cache. So you don't need to go to that API every time. and you're not exhausting the API limit. So that is also one of the popular use cases for caching.
Yes, I think language is also a barrier. So I think Node.js, does Node.js impact the latency? So she wants to answer. She wants an
No,
answer for that.
I don't think so. If you see, Node.js is a very popular language these days, and people might argue that it is single-threaded, so it might impact, but it doesn't. It has a sync, which is a main benefit of Node.js.
I think Node.js is probably like an, what do you call? It's V8 engine and a C++ running upon it.
Yeah,
It's just a wrapper that Rand Dahl written, and I think it's a huge book. I wrote an article on it's an article on why Node.js is going to kill, and also there is Drone.js, Drone.js. I forgot the name of it, but there is a new language which is coming up on the market. There's Drone.js. It's Drone.js. Yes, it's Drone.js is coming up on it. I'm like, what? This is so crazy that people have realized, okay, we need a new language at the end of the day, but it's still the same old syntax, it's still the same old V8
yeah.
with an extended C++ code, and but it's just running with the help of an Node.js server or a JavaScript files that you're running. Yeah, I think, sorry for those kind of an introduction, because Node.js can't be done in an hour or something. It's a huge time span that it just takes in learning that. Like, it's a lot. I think. Thank you so much, Poonam. This is Diwali time, and you gave us a slot, and I'm very glad that you were able to actually do an advanced demo. By the way, this is what you do in the bounty hunting as well, right? Why people say, why is there no latency? Latency has to be less and things like that. We still go back to the browser and we look at the every little timestamp of it, and we just do that. And I think Poonam was like, I every time I just ask her to do something new on something, like she always comes up with something else, and it actually is enriching. Thank you so much, Poonam. And
So
any
I'm
ending
always enthusiastic to collaborate with Vishwas because I've seen him grow over the years, and I really like the work he's doing. So that's why I never say no to him.
remarks? That's true. That's true. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, Jigyasa, again, she asked the question. We know that Redis is open sourced, but how does managed services make an impact? Okay, this is an enterprise question. So, any thoughts on the enterprise managed services like AWS, Azure,
Um,
managed
So I'm not sure if you know that Redis has also come up with Redis Cloud, where you can go and just spin up a server there in their Redis labs. So I think they understand the importance of managed services. That's why they have introduced it. So it depends on your use case and how comfortable you are with Redis. If you want managed service, you can go ahead and use it. But if you are a seasoned developer and you can manage things on your own, and deal with the errors along the way, then you can go ahead and implement it from scratch also in your application.
Yes, I think you need to know what an error is, because fundamentally it's just a Linux kernel. It's just reacting and acting according to a databases, and now you know for sure you need to put this in a cache, and how do you put it in a cache, or else what's the kind of a database that it needs to go and set, because S3 has different pricing models, and you need to understand where S3 fits in, where this version of an S3 fits in, where that version of an S3 fits in. So, and Redis is all about caching. I think VMware solution is a lot to learn, lot to contribute to the world of deep learning, machine learning, you name it. It still uses Redis at the end of the day. It's still microservices getting deployed. I think, thank you so much, Poonam, and I'm ending the broadcast. This is Vishwas Nayan, community advocate at Obstreet, signing off from the show. And if you have any queries and questions, do drop your questions right at connect@buildpiper.io. We'll be able to solve you that. If you are more of an service person and you want any of it, I think there's Obstreet, which is ready for you to give you that kind of an intuitive understanding about the DevOps practices. And Poonam is an amazing community person. Reach out to her because she loves teaching as many people as she can. So thank you so much, folks. I'm ending the broadcast. Yes,